Bangladesh. Feeling so high, summer rhythms playing with a fire. Go, 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 oh, shining around. In the summer sun, we're a summer loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Talking Brazil Ball. The Brasileirão is over. Botafogo win their league title for the first time in 29 years to clinch a historic double. Heartbreak for Palmeiras, who lost at Fluminense, who were celebrating themselves after staying up. Atlético Paranaense weren't so lucky as the wind was taken out of the hurricane sails and they are down for the first time in 12 years. Fortaleza clinch a top four spot after stopping the Inter machine, and all of that and so much more to come in today's episode of Talking Brazil Ball. And to go over all of that, and like I said, so much more as Botafogo finally end that almost 3-decade wait, is my co-host George. George, it's the week we've all been waiting for. It's the end of the Brasileirão season, and Botafogo have done it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about waiting for it, getting enjoying it, aren't we, James? It could go on for a long period of time for me, but it had to end at some point. And we have to say, James, of course, we have to say parabéns, which means congratulations to Botafogo. Yeah, worthy winners in the end. And for me, was over the course of the season the best team in the league by quite a long way. I know it was 4 points in the end, then over Palmeiras, but for me, yeah, Fogo and Arta Jorge is the best in the league. So congratulations to them, parabéns, and I hope they're enjoying themselves. Like you said, what a kind of 8 days for them, winning the Libertadores, and then 8 days later they're celebrating the double with the clinching of the Serie A, the Brasileirão. So yeah, well done to them. We're going to get into it all here. There's so much to get into, James, and I just want to say, whoever joined me, I know there's a few people that joined me on the live stream last night. It was the first ever live stream we did, James. I know you couldn't make it, but I did a live stream 2.5 hours and kept everybody up to date with what was going on. So I hope everybody enjoyed who watched. And thank you, of course, a special mention to Ryan, who did have a lot of questions for me as well. And, so we had a good kind of conversation. So that was good. Hopefully in the future, maybe a few more people can tune in, and it can be more of a fruitful affair, really. But it was good to do.
Yeah, well done on doing that. It was keeping everybody up to date. It was an early kickoff, really, 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, and all the games kicking off at the same time. So good to do you were a bit of a Jeff Stelling, right? You're doing your kind of, there's been a goal at over there.
That was it. Yeah, I just wanted to have a bit of that with it. I think Ryan did actually say he reminded him a bit of final score. So that was what I was kind of going for. Yeah. And then, there's been a goal at such and such. Can I stop you there? It's, there's been a goal, but who's it gone to? So it was good fun. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes in the future if we can sort out any more. And there was just stuff to play for, James, as well. Obviously, if it was all sewn up, I wouldn't have bothered, but there was things to go for, things to play for, and in the end, it's all sewn up, like you said. There's some people crying today, there's other people celebrating, so that's just the way football goes.
Yeah, and it didn't go. There weren't all that many twists and turns. I have to say, the game seemed to be quite done and dusted. There was no real late drama or anything like that. There weren't games swinging one way or another. It did tend to follow quite a set pattern, really. And as I think I predicted on our pre-match predictions, Paranense did end up going down, like I said. And that, of course, in itself is a big shock, and one that we're going to get into a little bit later on. But before we touch on all of it, George, before we get into it all, why don't you just run down those fixtures? Unless, have you got your quiz actually early before we do run down the fixtures?
Yeah, I have got a quiz, James. I don't expect you to get anything from this, actually, this quiz that I've got, the quiz question, but you might do, and I suppose you can have a stab at it. You can have a go at it, a guess at it. So, obviously, James, Pogo won the league last night with the 2-1 win over Sao Paulo. It was only, in fact, their third consecutive season in the Brasileirão after being relegated in 2020, finishing bottom of the table in the 2020 Brasileirão season. They came straight back up by winning Serie B in 2021, James. But what I want to know, and again, you have a guess here, but I want to know, they finished top. Which other 3 teams were promoted that season with Botafogo?
In 2021.
2021, Fogo won it. Who else was promoted with them?
Vittoria, maybe?
No.
Corinthians, I think they were down at one point.
No, not Corinthians.
No. Give us a clue. Were they in Serie A this season?
No, none of them are in Serie A this season. They were the previous season.
Right.
I think 2 of them got relegated the season before we started the pod.
Goiás, maybe? Curitiba?
Both of those 2, yeah. Goiás come second, Curitiba were third. Who was a fourth?
Sport Recife?
No, it was Avi FC. Avi. So,
okay. 2 out of 4 isn't bad with a bit of a clue.
Just in you mentioned which teams were in the Serie A this season. Out of that league, Vittoria got relegated to Serie C, and Vasco and Cruzeiro were both in there, finishing kind of lower bottom half, really. Vasco 10th, Cruzeiro 14th in that particular season. So, yeah.
In Serie B?
Yeah, in Serie B. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Just goes to show, and like I say, I know Corinthians have been down. Obviously, we know Gremio were down a couple of years ago only. So it does happen. Paranense have joined that list, like I said, after 12 years in the top flight. So they'll have to be looking ahead now to what comes next. But George, there's a good little quiz. Let's get into it. Let's get those fixtures down, and then let's look back at the last weekend of action in the Brasileirão 2024.
Yeah, of course, James. It would be a pleasure to run through them. So it was all, like I said, all on Sunday the 8th of December, same time kickoff. Galo 1, PR 0, Bahia 2, Gio 0, Fogo 2, Sao Paulo 1, Cuiabá 1, Vasco 2, Flamengo 2, Vitória 2, Fortaleza 3, Inter 0, Grêmio 0, Corinthians 3, Juventude 0, Cruzeiro 1, Palmeiras 0, Fluminense 1, and Bragantino 5, Criciúma 1.
Yeah, that's it. All together, all at once. And George, let's just waste no time. Get stuck right in. I think we'll just get stuck right in, right at the top. Obviously, we've got the games of the week coming in a moment. But before that, let's just talk a little bit about Fogo. So, as you said there, Fogo, Libertadores winners just a week previously, or a few days previously. It was about a week, wasn't it? It was Saturday night, was it? 8 days before. And, they stood on the brink of it. We knew that a win, a draw even, would have seen them over the line. As it was, they could have lost and won it still. Palmeiras obviously beaten at home by Flu, which we're going to look at in slightly more detail. But they are actually only the third team in history to win a Copa Libertadores and a Brazilian league title at the same time. So Santos have done it twice, George, 1962 and 1963, led by, of course, the late Pelé. And then Flamengo were the last team to do it in 2019, and that was a really good team. I know that very well because Liverpool were pushed all the way by them in the Club World Cup that year, only just beat them in extra time, and that was an excellent Liverpool team as well. So they were a proper side, that Flamengo side. So that just goes to show, George, how difficult it is to do this. And as you mentioned there at the top, Arte Jorge deserves incredible praise for coming in and delivering in his first season in the country.
Oh, he absolutely does, and it looks like he's fallen in love with the Brazilian fans and the Brazilian football. So I imagine he'll stick around for a little longer, James, and potentially try and emulate what he's done this time. It's an amazing achievement, first time off. But for me, like I said, he's a cut above whatever else the Brasileirão has to offer in terms of managers in this season. He was the best, and he is the best. I think he's the best equipped. He's the best in terms of experience at a higher level. So for me, yeah, there's no surprise really with the expensively assembled squad as well. Obviously, John Textor has been, throwing the checkbook at it, and it's no surprise really that they did do the double in a way as well. So, but I think almost the Libertadores triumph is a little bit more impressive than winning the Brasileirão for me completely. But, they have to win domestic honours as well, and fair play to them. I suppose they'll be hoping to go for the Copa do Brasil as well, potentially next year, and make it a kind of hat trick of wins for Hata Jorge. But let's see if they can win the title again. I think they'll be hard pushed for it next year. I know they're losing a couple of players, aren't they, as well? So they're going to have to be on it again. I think Palmeiras will come with a bit more vengeance as well to avenge this one. So it's going to be difficult, but they'll be right up there for time to come. As long as John Textor is pumping money in, they'll always have a good enough side to be up there in this division, really.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It was only really they maybe got fortunate by it was just Palmeiras in the end. Flamengo in third were 9 points behind them. They'd have been expected at the start. Obviously, we tipped them, or you tipped them to go all the way. So you'd expect that there might be a little bit more challenge next season, but it can happen where there's only one team who pushes you. That doesn't take away from anything. But you say they'll be partying. I don't know if they'll be partying too much, George, because in just 2 days' time they are going to the Club World Cup. So it's the last one before the revamped edition, which they will, of course, be a part of next summer as well. But they are heading there as South American champions, and they're playing against Pachuca, a Mexican side who I think were the kind of North American champions. And if all goes well, and they will eventually, they're hoping, meet Real Madrid in the final. I think Textor himself and Luis Enrique have been a bit bullish about their chances against Madrid. Obviously looking forward to a meeting with them and testing themselves. They need to get through the first couple of games first, but you would back them probably to make that final and really test themselves in what would be a real occasion. Fluminense found out the hard way last year that Man City are not to be trifled with, and you'd imagine the same would perhaps happen again here. But Fogo will give it a go. They're looking forward, they're looking up, and as you said, they'll lose a couple of players, Almada especially. I'm not sure what's going on with Henrique, but I'm sure they'll bring in some others as well. So yeah, congratulations once again, parabéns to Botafogo, and what a season it's been for them. What a season it's been to cover Fogo, and I'm sure we've both become a bit more fond of them, I would say, haven't we, George, over the year?
I would have said so, James. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a team I will look for going forward. You know what I mean? And yeah, for sure. You talk about the Club World Cup. Is the International Cup? Did you say, James?
Well, I don't know what they're calling it now. I think it's the World Cup, to be honest.
Right, because they've gone on New England Patriots playing, haven't they, the NFL team. I think John Textor has put them all on that to Doha, and they're having quite a time, on there over there to Doha. He did joke, didn't he, as well, saying a small team from Madrid is waiting for them. I think he was meaning Real. He seems a bit of a character, John Textor. He was on the pitch, wasn't he, celebrating with the players last night after they won. So he's very much involved, and let's see where he can take them, yeah.
Yeah, he's also promised to take them to the Bahamas. He apparently owns a private island there, and the whole squad are going to be going there. So, he does seem to make it a little bit about himself, but we'll overlook that because it's a great achievement for the club, for the fans, and that's nice to have a new winner after all those years. So well done again to them. But of course, George, where there's a winner, there has to be a loser, and tasting that defeat for the first time in 3 years. In the end, it was Palmeiras, George, and it was your game of the week at the Allianz Parque. Palmeiras took on Flu. And Flu, let's give them credit, George, because they were, you backed them to go down, I believe, before this game. It did look tough for them, but I think just the wind had been taken out of Palmeiras a little bit. They obviously just wanted it that bit more, and they did come away with a 1-0 win, which actually saw them finish 13th, which, given the season they've had, is not altogether a travesty. So how did you see this one, and what's the fallout from it?
Yeah, I think the fallout from it, James, I think Mano has signed a contract potentially. I couldn't work out how long for, or whether he had actually, but the signs do seem to suggest that he has signed a contract of some sort with Fluminense to obviously maybe continue on as their manager in the 2025 edition of the Brasileirão. So we'll wait and see on that news, but early signs look like he has signed a contract. Really, definitely has agreed to. The game itself is a bit pedestrian from both teams, to be honest. Palmeiras have the better of the play and better of the possession, but I think you're right. I think Palmeiras were probably knocked out a little bit by the sort of enormity of the task ahead, and they weren't really all guns blazing, really, because they probably knew that even a win, it didn't mean that they were going to win the title. So it was a little bit of more like just a bit of like an exercise for them, really. I don't think they won, but they might not have won the league anyway. So, yeah, both teams a little bit pedestrian. A lot of shots just going miles over the crossbar. The game was settled by, quite a nice goal, really, from Senna, who's come up with a couple of really important goals in the last couple of games of the season. There, 2 1-0 wins, both settled by goals from himself, and that was only his second and third goals of the season. He joined sort of a little way after the season had started in July. So yeah, it was a real. It was a win that they needed. Obviously, Fluminense needed a win. They didn't want to make it hard for themselves and rely on other teams. And to be fair, they went there and Palmeiras, and they went and they won. And I don't think many teams have only 5. That was only the 5th team to beat Palmeiras at the home ground this season. So it was a bit of a task for Flu, and they went about it well. Like I said, the goal was quite nice. Serna kind of nicked the ball from the defender on the right-hand side. James cut in and then beat Weverton at his near post. It was a first half goal. Like you said, a lot of the games are settled in kind of quite quick time. Really, there was not a lot of peril really, and Flu kind of saw it out to a win. And I think obviously they're celebrating. You can see behind me, Thiago Silva. He's given Serna a cuddle there. I think they're all just relief really that the season is done, and they can stay up and enjoy another season in the Serie A. As far as Palmeiras are concerned, I thought Abel Ferreira would be kind of thinking about his future potentially, but it seems like he's come back with a bit more vengeance, like I said, and said they're going to keep going. They're going to keep, going with the young players as well and trusting the youth. Obviously, we know about Estevão. They will still have him at the start of next season, but he will be departing, won't he, of course? So they need to find the next sort of Estevão, the next Hendrick. Everybody needs to now look at who's coming up through the youth academy. And I think Abel Ferreira will still have the bit between his teeth and want to go again and avenge this one and get Fogo back for that win,
Yeah, I'm sure he will. There would be a question we were asking it over the season. They obviously crashed out the Libertadores at a relatively early stage, and the Cup as well. Wasn't a good season for them. I mean, it can happen after so many titles. Let's not forget he has won 2 Copa Libertadores and he's won back-to-back Brasileirão. So, it can happen. He deserves that kind of time to have a season, but you'd feel like if the next season doesn't start that well, then he might be under a little pressure, Abel Ferreira. But going back to Flu, I mean, in the end, like I said, they could have lost this game actually and stayed up. They were 4 points ahead of Atlético Paranense in that final relegation spot. They couldn't quite get ahead of Galo and get into the Sudamericana. But again, I think that the remit for right from those early stages of the season, when they just had such an awful start, was just to stay up. And that was Mano's remit when he came in, and he's managed to do it. It got a bit tight at the end, but again, they made themselves difficult to beat. I've praised Bragantino for that, and that ultimately helped them. But, they didn't lose for the final 5 games of the season. They only lost 1 of the last 7, sorry. That's a good record, and that's ultimately what kept them up, isn't it? And I think the man in your picture there, Thiago Silva, obviously had a great deal to do with that. I don't know what his situation is, if he's staying or not, but obviously they're going to have to put that down and just analyse and ask why they were so bad. I know they've brought in a couple of players in the mid-season. There's a midfielder, I can't remember his name, who they brought in, a Uruguayan chap who looks quite decent, but they're going to have to answer those questions, aren't they, and do a lot better next time.
Well, they definitely will. And if, like I said, if it is true that Mano has signed his contract for the next, for the next year at least, then that's good signs. Like you said, they were hard to beat. He made them hard to beat, and like you said, only 1 defeat in the last. Did you say 1 defeat in the last 6 or unbeaten in the last 6? So, yeah, I mean that's all right, for where they were. And like you said, right from the very go, the awful start under Denise, Mano, his remit, like you said, was to keep them up, and he's done that. And he said he was reflecting on when he did sign the contract in, when was it? He signed in July, didn't he, as the manager? He said he got 100 calls from friends and people saying he was crazy, but he was happy with how Flu welcomed him in and all that, and he was excited, I think, by the talent that was in this Fluminense squad. And I think, given a full season, Mano might be able to get a tune out of these. I know there's a few that are leaving. I think the likes of Felipe Melo, his contract's up. Obviously, he's getting on now, and people like that. They got rid of Marcelo, didn't they, as well? So it might be time for a little bit of a clear out of the old heads and start to focus a bit more on the youth. Obviously, Thiago Silva was a big part of why they stayed up, and whether he wants to continue, I'm sure it'll be completely up to him whether he wants to play on again, with him hitting 40 now. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, I imagine they'll have a better time next season, James.
Yeah, I think they probably will, although they do need to make sure they address exactly why things did go so pear-shaped after that Copa Libertadores win last year, and make sure they do kind of rectify that before heading into the next season. And it does, I'm sure, look like Mano. Mano deserves his chance, and I'm sure that they will be better as well. But let's wait and see on that one. The other team up there, George, at the end, I mean, they weren't a million miles away, your tip, Flamengo. They were 9 points shy of Botafogo. They were 3 behind Palmeiras in the end in second, so not a million miles away. They did draw that last game 2-2. I don't want to ask you about the game specifically. I just want to ask you how you feel about Flamengo's season on the whole.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit disappointing, James. They have to be disappointed. Obviously, they got the Copa do Brasil, like you said, the cup, which that is the saving grace of it in the end, isn't it, really? They did get silverware. They did manage to, qualify for the Libertadores straight up in third position. So it's immediate qualification for that for next year as well. So it wasn't all bad, but I think they would have wanted to go a bit closer for the league title. I mean, 9 points off isn't too bad, but I think they would have wanted in reality to really go a little bit closer than that. And it obviously didn't start. They had that issues, didn't they, with Tite in the middle of it all, and obviously they had to change the manager. I think Felipe Luis will get his opportunity as well to manage them, as the full-time manager next season. So they'll have a little bit more continuity in there with him and not chopping and changing, hopefully. So I imagine, again, they'll be close again. They'll be a little bit disappointed, I think, with third place, to be honest.
Well, they did improve on last year. They were fourth last year. They also got 4 more points than last year. So an improvement in that regard, and also some silverware. But again, yeah, the standards are high there, and they will want to be going for more next year. Right, George, let's turn our attention to the other end of the table, because, gosh, there was a lot to talk about here, really. My game of the week was the crucial one there, the Red Bull Bragantino 5, Criciúma 1 game. I mean, Red Bull Bragantino, we've criticised them a lot, George, going into this last stretch of the season, but they really have turned up in those final 2 games. This was an absolute demolition job, and we did speak about it last time that they had the easiest game of the relegation candidates, and it just proved that way. They were never losing this game. They were always in charge of it. The first goal was only 13 minutes in, Capixaba with a goal, and then they just didn't really look back. Mendonca got another after half an hour, and then you were just thinking, well, the pressure's really on the other teams, because they've gone and made sure of their job, and they just didn't ever look like giving it up. Fagundes did get one back for Criciúma, but they hit the gas again second half, and Eduardo Sacha with another key goal, George. He blasted it in once again. Mosquera got a 5th, and then Jonathan topped it off with a 5th, and 5-1 looks handsome, and it just led into a party feeling, really. In Bragantino, they didn't look like staying up a couple of weeks ago, but they did pull it out of the bag. And obviously, Criciúma, as we know, were already down. But I think what this game did highlight to me is just how big that goal on the last match day was by Eduardo Sacha, just a few minutes from the end against Atlético Paranense. And without that goal that won them the game, And it was a great goal, remember. It won the goal of the round last round, I think, didn't it? Did we give it the goal of the round in the end?
No, it didn't. It was Depay, wasn't it, on Friday? But it was
But
close, wasn't it? I mean, the enormity of the goal. Looking back now, it's enormous. It's absolutely enormous.
well, if Sasha doesn't score that goal, Bragantino go down. It's as simple as that. Without that goal, you take 2 off Bragantino, they're on 42, and you add 1 to Paranense because they were the opponents that day, so they've been on 43. So without that goal, obviously we don't know the way things play out. It's not as simple as that, but it's really difficult to overstate just how key that moment was in Bragantino's season, having not won for so long, having been on the way down, really. And facing a relegation rival at their home, the psychological blow would have been enormous. And as we saw, Paranense couldn't stomach that. But just in terms of real terms, what it meant for the table was just incredible. And he stepped up again with probably the key goal, really, the third one, which broke Kuchuma's spirit. And George, what a player, what a moment. They have to be really thankful for him. He's had a good season despite them being poor, hasn't he?
He has. He's come up, like I said, on not only that PR goal, but he got a goal, didn't he, as well as they drew with Cruzeiro in the game before that PR game. So he's scored 4 goals in 3 games, James, and they've collected 7 points in that little final stretch of the season, which has kept them up. So you know what I mean. He has, in no small part, had kept them up. Almost 8 goals, top scorer. The other one is Helio Junior, who we know departed for Mexico quite some time ago now, a couple of months ago. So, he's not playing for them anymore, and he's the next on the list. The next on the list that is playing for them is that man Jonathan, who got a goal last night, had a good game, got an assist as well, but he's on 3 goals. So it just shows you what a sort of impact he had on their season. Obviously, he's a well-travelled player, isn't he? He's no spring chicken, as they say, is he? He's been about the block a bit, and he knows how to score goals in the Brasileirão. So really, really important contribution from him, and it can't be understated that at all. He has basically kept them up with his goals, and that is, like I said, his goals has basically given them at least 4 points there, to really bring them out of the relegation zone. I've criticised them no end over the last few months, James. I think it's been deserved in many ways because they're on that horrible run of winless games. But ultimately, then when it comes to crunch, they've delivered, and it's fair play to them. I think it's good in a way that they kept up. Red Bull are a big company. They wouldn't have been happy at all to see one of their teams get relegated to the 2nd division. So in that sense as well, it was very important that Bragantino pulled it out last night.
Yeah, Mr. Jurgen Klopp's joining in the new year. He wouldn't have been pleased to see them going down there. So maybe he was having a little smile to himself, Jurgen, last night. I'm not sure. I hope he was. But another man who should have been smiling is Fernando Seabra, George. I said on the previous show that I did hope that they stayed up for his sake because I feel he was harshly dealt with at Cruzeiro earlier in the year. And to be honest, he's been terrific since he's come in. They haven't been winning many games, but they haven't been losing. And just like Flu, they only lost 1 of the last 7 as it went. They won those last 2 games. Obviously, they drew 4 and they only lost 1. And that was all under Seabra. So, he's got a contract, I was reading, until next year. So he's going to be there for the next season. And they'll, of course, be another team who will be hoping for much, much better things come next season. It can hardly go much worse for them. I think this will be a wake-up call for them. They were, I think, going in the right direction over the last few years, and they now need to just take a step back and maybe rebuild a little bit again, maybe have a look around the other Red Bull clubs if there's any good loan moves they can get coming in. I know there was 1 or 2 on loan, but maybe they just need to dip into that a little more and just to have a little bit of a better time out next time. As for Kuchuma, George, as we know, they were already long gone. I think they added a fair bit to the division for a little while. Obviously, Balassi was someone who we could look out for every week. And I like it's a nice little club, nice shirts, nice kind of little stadium. But ultimately, it was too big of an ask for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and let's be honest, we've said it many times, it was the first season in the Brasileirão in the top division for 10 years, James. So it was just a little bit too much of an ask for them, but they weren't that far away, were they, 6 points away from staying up? So it wasn't too much in the end, but I think just the lack of quality, really. Just like you said, Balassi, and he was the top scorer with 8 goals. Kaike had a decent season, but he didn't score for a long period of time as well. He was on 5. So, yeah, I don't know what will happen with Yannick there if he wants to, I imagine he might have a suitor in the Brasileirão after his performance this season, potentially if he wants to stay in Brazil. Although maybe he wants to stay with Kachuma, who knows? But yeah, just a little bit too much for them and Tame Catty to take hold of it in the end. But it was a valiant effort, really.
Certainly was. One club who cannot be praised with those kind of words, George, is Atletico Paranense. So we'll move on and just look at what went wrong for them. I mean, we're going to do another show, I think, next week where we might delve into things a little bit deeper. But I just wanted to touch on what is the first relegation, as I said, for 12 years for Atletico Paranense. For the first time in 34 years, the Parana state will have no representatives in the Brasileirão, with Coritiba still in the second division and Parana Clube, who have been the first division side as well. I think they're in the third division even. So, in the end, they lost 1-0 to Gallo. George, you'll have been pleased with that one. Obviously, it was a bit of a mess of a game. Very, very, very nervy for Gallo, and Holt missed a penalty. It went in off the rebound. But all it meant was that Paranense were cut adrift 2 points away from safety in 17th place. And yeah, what do you make of it, George? You were saying all along you felt Bragantino and Paranense deserved to go. One of them has. How do you look back on just a disastrous season for them? It was their centenary year, actually, so it's left a lot of embarrassment amongst the club that their centenary year has ended in a real shock relegation.
Yeah, I mean, that just speaks volumes, James. You said it right there. It's embarrassing, really, for them. Very embarrassing. Like I said, I was championing them to get relegated because I felt like Bragg, I thought they deserved it. They deserved it, that horrible run of form they went on sort of mid-season. They haven't really recovered, let's be honest, from it. I don't think they've really recovered since Kuka left, have they really, when he left as manager? It was a bit of a shock for them. I don't know whether they really had a proper plan. They obviously went for youth, a very inexperienced manager, wasn't it, Verini? The Uruguayan fella, it really didn't work. I think he won 1 game in the league. He seemed to be able to get wins in the cup competitions, but he couldn't buy a win in the league, and it just all went wrong for them, didn't it? All went wrong for them, and they never recovered. Obviously, you've got to feel a little bit for Luciano Gonzalez a little bit, because he just couldn't get them. He just couldn't get them any going, and you thought maybe they just upturned in form. They had a little spell there, didn't they? Sort of towards the end, 4 without a win. They did beat Gallo actually about a month ago, didn't they? So it would have been sweet for Gallo to get back at them for that defeat. But I thought maybe then they might stay up, but it wasn't to be. That, RB Bragantino defeat on Thursday was a real sucker punch for them, and they obviously just couldn't recover. Gallo, from my point of view, finally a win for my boys, and Holt missed the pen, but it came off the post and in it went from Rubens. It was a good finish, actually, but it didn't really mean too much for them at that point, because I think it was all getting sewn up and sorted out anyway. With a draw, I think PR were going down either way, weren't they? So, it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. There's an upturn. Well, a bit of positive news for them in the aftermath of it is Nikau, who I think was on loan at Paranense. I can't remember off the top of my head who was on loan from, but he was having Sao Paulo. So he had a fabulous season, really, James, in the otherwise awful season that they all had. He got 6 goals. He was joint top scorer with Ulimar, and he's come out and said he wants to stay at Bragantino next season for 2025. He says it's a wound that is difficult to heal, but he wants to stay on. So whether they can sort a deal out with him and his party to stay on in the Serie B. I mean, let's be honest, they'll probably be right at the very top, like Santos. They'll probably be, the team to beat for sure in Serie B next season. And I think that even the three teams that have come down with them, Kachuma, Kuyaba, and Gio, I think they probably won't be able to challenge them too much. I think get it right, keep the majority of the squad, then they could have something, a good season, a positive season next season. But it's been a disaster. And I think Kuka, because they were going okay up until he left, and he just left. And he obviously had his reasons, but I think that rocked him a little bit, and they haven't been able to recover. Whether Luciano Gonzalez stays or not, I think it's still a little bit up in the air. But certainly, such an embarrassment in your centenary year to get relegated for the first time in 12 years. It's just embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, Lucho came, I think, and said that he didn't want to discuss his future before the last two games, I think it was. So it doesn't seem as though he's for sure going to be there. You would make him favourites next year. And one man who's put his hand up and taken the blame for everything that went on is a technical director, Paolo Attuari, who has come out and said, "I am the culprit here. You can put it all on me." So obviously it's not all on him, but he's the one taking the blame publicly. I don't know, whether that rings true, but the players for me have to take a lot of the blame as well. Obviously difficult to get going under 4 managers. They had a couple of interim as well, didn't they? So, it's hard to get going under so many different managers, but you have to at one point stand up and take responsibility for your performances. So PR have gone, like I say, we'll go into it a little more next week and just have a bit more of a review. But for now, let's move on, George, because we're going to do the awards for one last time this season. We're going to miss this, aren't we? It's going to be a few months before we get to give out some more awards, although we're going to give out some seasonal ones, aren't we, next year? So, next week, or maybe next year by the time we do it, but I don't think so. Anyway, the young player of the round, there was a few candidates for this, to be fair, wasn't there, George? William Gomez has had a good season, and he got a nice goal where he did really well to win it back and bury the chance at Botafogo, obviously tried to put a halt to their celebrations, and he's one to look out for, I think, next year. Is he still only 18 at Sao Paulo?
Yeah, we spoke about him briefly before, I think, James, and it was a lovely goal. He sort of wrestled the ball back from Fogo, and then the pass didn't work, but then a little bit of indecision in the defence. He pounced on it, and then he finished it really nicely. So at 18, he's definitely one to look out for. He was unlucky, really, not to bag this award, but I think we tend to go on, the sort of how it went in the result. How did they do in terms of the result as well? Obviously, Sao Paulo lost the game in the end, so I think that kind of ruled him out in a way as well.
Yeah, they lost the last 3 in the end. Sao Paulo did end up finishing 6th. Luciano Rodriguez, George, another goal for him. This one was a penalty. Obviously, penalties aren't going to win you any awards if others have stepped up as well. But another notable outing for him, six goals this season. He's only been there half the season. I think he's another one who can really catch the eye.
Definitely is, James. I think, like I said before, I put my neck on the line a little bit and said, I think Man City will be looking over in Brazil and saying, hey, maybe we can pinch this lad for next year. He's 21 now, he'll be 22 in the summer. I won't be surprised if, like Salvinho this season, I won't be surprised, to see him in a City shirt next season. It'd be interesting to see, because he's had a storming season, really, coming from Uruguay, different standard, and he's done well.
Yeah, obviously looks a player. Bahia, big win for them as well. Finally, Rogelio Ceni won 2 out of the last 3 and did end up qualifying Bahia for the Libertadores. So after such a tricky run, a positive end of the season for Mr. Ceni. And George, more candidates as well. A young man called Tevez got the winner for Cruzeiro, and another big win for them, really, although it wasn't enough to get them into the Libertadores. They did end up 9th, but they needed that win, and they beat Juventude 1-0. And 18-year-old Tevez popped up, only his 5th game for Cruzeiro, and he stuck home the winner. He was another candidate, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, another one, James. A few of them, like you said, stuck in with a goal, a good performance. That was, like you said, a good win. It don't mean anything for the team, really, in the end. Like you said, they came up short in terms of Libertadores qualification. It is the Sudamericana for them again next year then. Whether they can go one better and win it next time, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think Denise will be there personally next year. I think that might be him done. I think he's potentially. I don't look. I look at the results. He hasn't really enjoyed the time at Cruzeiro. I think they might be looking for a new manager come the start of next season.
Yep, certainly wouldn't be a surprise given the way things have gone and that Sudamericana final loss, as you said there. Bad-tempered game, that one as well. A couple of red cards thrown in there. But George, none of them could win that coveted Young Player of the Round, the last chance of the 2024 season. Obviously, we might keep an eye on a couple of them heading into next year. But the man who won it was Bragantino's Mendonca, or Vincinho, I think they call him. Vincinho, only 20 years old. He, of course, got the second goal of the 5-1 win, and that was a big one, really, after 30 minutes. It was a relatively straightforward finish, across into the 6-yard box, and he stuck it away. But it was still a big moment for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, big moment for him. He needed to be there. Yeah, it was a relatively simple finish, but you still have to be there and finish him off, don't you? And he's a young fella, isn't he? Well, he's 20, isn't he? He's not long, really. He's been playing for Bragantino quite a lot this season, 19 games. That is his second goal of the season as well. He got a goal in a draw with Gremio in September. So second goal of the season. But for me, I think just the way that Bragantino played, that is where his teammates played as well. That gives him the award this time, I think. Just the massive result that they got, and he contributed to it. So that for me is why he wins that one this time.
Yep, well done to Vincinho, the last Young Player of the Round, winner of the Talking Brazil Ball Award in 2024. I don't remember who won the first one, George. I can't think back. I think it was the Fogo right-back, who doesn't seem to have played an awful lot since.
It was, I believe, James, I think the first winner was Ponte.
Yeah, you're right, Matteo Ponte.
This season, yeah, I think it was Ponte, the man who won the first one. I'm just actually having a check on that, but I think it was.
It was,
Mr. Ponte, yeah, it was. So that he was the first. Mendonca was the last.
Yeah, let's see who'll win the next one. But well done to that boy, and we'll have a look at who wins the Young Player of the season. Of course, George, we'll have to get our thinking caps on, although it won't take much thinking, perhaps. But we'll know. We'll just give it out anyway next week. But let's move ahead, George, to the Player of the Round, the final Player of the Round of the award. And again, there was a couple of candidates, I'd have said, in this one, as you mentioned already. Jonathan for Bragantino as well, goal and a well-placed assist. But there was a couple of more in there, weren't there? For Vegetti was certainly in the running. He's had a really good end to the season after he had a good start to the season. He's had a good end to the season. He kind of went missing a little in the middle in the summertime, I would say, but two well-taken goals here to give Vasco an important-ish kind of win as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Pablo Vegetti, veteran player now, but that was his 11th and 12th goals of the season. So, and it's only his second sort of season in the Brazil. He's only been there a year and a half, hasn't he? Really, at Vasco, coming from Argentina. So, fair play to him. I don't know what his contract situation is. We know 36 is relatively young, potentially in the Brazilian as well. So I'm sure he'll keep going. But he got another. Yeah, it was a couple of nice goals. I'm not sure if there was many more really. Really, when you think about it, there was one or two with a goal and assist. I know that. What's his name for Bragantino as well? Mosquera. He got a goal and assist as well, coming off the bench. He had a good little bit of a bit part to play. The Colombian fella came on last sort of 20-odd minutes and got a goal and assist. So he had a good game as well. But in the end, James, I went for a man who the game was playing a little bit of second fiddle, obviously, to the relegation and then the title challenge at the top. It was a man in the Fortaleza Inter game. It was an important game in its own right, and it was Mr. Moses Vieira, the 28-year-old Brazilian winger, who got two goals in the first 20 minutes, James, to really put to bed your team Inter and put them into Libertadores qualification sort of qualification rounds. So Fortaleza get top 4. They get immediate qualification to the Libertadores for 2025. And I think Mr. Moises Vieira was a big part in doing that.
Yeah, it was a straight shootout for fourth this. 4-3-5 at the time, and that's the way it ended. And yeah, Moises Vieira capitalised on a really bad mistake from Sergio Rocher, who's a well-travelled goalie, Uruguayan #1. I think he still possibly is. It was a really bad error and took too long on the ball, and I think he cleared it against Vieira in the end, and it was an easy task for him just to tap it in. And then the second one was another quite poor bit of defending from Inter, as I don't know who it was trying to slide in to tackle, and he kind of knocked it, bulldozed past him, and then it was a really good finish. But yeah, 2 big goals inside 20 minutes, and that basically killed Inter. As we know, Inter had been really flying up until recently, and then the last 3 games of the season have just put a bit of a dampener on it. They've lost 3 times, and without scoring as well. Oh, so they lost 3-2, didn't they, Flamengo, but they were 3-0 down until very late. They then lost to Botafogo, which of course is no disgrace. But to go to Fortaleza and lose 3-0, I think would have left a slight question mark in the minds of many supporters. Obviously, as we know, Mercado's had to work double hard to win them over after, giving his Gremio past and even his Juventude past. Fans weren't too happy to see him come in. He's obviously changed that, full 360 with his performances, and the team have been incredible. Shot up the table, even had hope of winning the title at one point, George. But those last 3 results just ask a bit of a question ahead of the next season, I would say.
Yeah, it does a little bit, James. Like I said, it's put a little bit of a dampener on it. I think there were 16 games unbeaten before then, and I thought, well, maybe they're going to go unbeaten for the whole season and challenge at the top. But as it was, like you said, it wasn't to be. No disgrace in losing to. In the end, I know Fortaleza is a bit of a strange result, but they have been, they finished 4th. They have had a very good season in the end. And the other 2, Fogo and Flamengo, like I said, no disgrace in losing to those 2. So it's just a little bit too much for them in the end. But given the struggles, obviously with things outside of football at the start of the season as well, you've got to say that, Mercado's done a marvellous job of keeping them, and getting them into 5th position, 3 points away from the top 4. It's still Libertadores qualification. I know they'll have to go through, I think it's a couple of rounds of qualifying, along with the other 3 teams, is it, as well? Yeah. But let's see if they can get in there. I'm sure, given a little more stability off the pitch as well in terms of the weather conditions, hopefully next season they can, start from the start and not be, having all these games in hand to really have a proper run at it under Mercado, because I think Mercado is very much a very good coach in this division, and I think he can do special things for them next time potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think anybody will panic. He deserves his shot, and like you said, a bit more stable conditions. But it is maybe a slight concern that the 3 games they lost there were to the teams who came 1st, 3rd, and 4th. As you said, difficult games, very much so. But maybe that's an indication that they aren't quite ready to make that step up yet. We'll see. But coming back to Fortaleza, obviously Moises Vieira had to finish those goals, and he well deserves his Player of the Round trophy this time. And they were actually the only undefeated team, George, at home in the Brasileirão this season. So again, difficult place to go. They've made it so. We talked about Palmeiras earlier, how they've lost 5 at home. I mean, you said only 5. I think that's quite a lot for a title challenging team to lose 5 games on your home patch. You certainly won't be getting anywhere doing that in the Premier League. So I think, to go unbeaten for a team like Fortaleza, obviously we know what they're all about now, and we won't underestimate them, I don't think, next year, but maybe a few teams did going into this season. But they finished in 4th place, like we've spoken about for much of the season. It could have been so much better for them. They did finish 11 points away from the top, so they weren't anywhere really close at the end. But it's still a hugely encouraging season for them. They did come 4th back in 2021, George, so this is not unprecedented as it might have looked like it was going to be at one time. But once again, I mean, Juan Pablo Voivoda, what can you say? Another terrific job. And yeah, he was wanting more actually at the end of the season. He said they've got a taste of it and they want more now. So maybe one to watch for next season, but we've seen teams where they've overperformed, where it could easily go the other way as well. So we'll have a look ahead that for next season. But what's your feeling on Fortaleza this time around?
Yeah, fabulous. Like you said, I think we underestimate them a little bit. Obviously, they finished 10th last time, James, mid-table. So they're a little bit of a team. I mean, even for the first sort of few months of the season, we weren't mentioning them a lot because they were kind of middle of the table a lot. And then they just sort of rose up and rose up. They wouldn't stop. They're going on a bit of a run like Inter did, towards the end of the season, sort of in the middle of it. And they really got themselves in a really good position. Unfortunately, as we thought it would be in the end, it was a little bit too much for them. And like you said, it could go one of two ways. It could go marvellous and they could be challenging again, or it could go really badly. And then they could end up like Fluminense towards the bottom end of the division. And no team, like we've sort of covered a bit earlier, is immune from relegation in this division. Even the big teams can get relegated, which is completely alien in the Premier League. You won't get the top end teams, getting relegated and then coming back up. So it just seems like nobody is immune from relegation. So they've got to just build on this season, because last time you did mention they did finish fourth in 2021. The next season they did finish in 8th position. So they've just got to, build on it. And like he said, they want more. He deserves every credit, really. He has been a fabulous, person in charge of their team. He really has, and he deserves a lot of credit amongst the other managers that have also done a fabulous job. I think he's definitely going to be in the running for our kind of manager of the year. He has to be.
Yeah, I think he's probably edged out Mercado as well in that respect, really, by winning this one in the end. Mercado, actually, for his kind of penny for his thoughts, he said at the end that once that chance of the title had gone, I think Inter just dropped off a little. So I think they were playing with that dream just to think, wow, we could come from nowhere and win it. And once that was taken away against Botafogo, I think, it was even before that, I think it was against Flamengo, I think they just kind of dropped off a bit and that kind of tiredness crept in. But yeah, congrats to Voivoda, congrats to Fortaleza in the Libertadores next season, and perhaps ones to watch, George. And it's worth noting that their local rivals, Serie A, have come up. So they're another side from Fortaleza. So that'll be an extra kind of incentive for them next year as well. And we'll look forward to that derby, won't we? And in terms of derbies too, they're Bahia, of course, qualified as well for the Copa Libertadores. They're not direct neighbours, but they are both from the northeast of the country. And as we realised, George, when we were doing the pod this season, Fortaleza fans were telling us that they don't get enough recognition. Well, it's actually the first time that two northeastern teams have ever qualified together for the Libertadores. So there you go. Maybe the tide's turning a little bit, and the teams that have come up are all, aside from Mirasol and Santos. So two sides again from the northeast, Sport Recife and Ceará, have come up.
Yeah, so there you go. So teams in that sort of area of the country are now getting a little bit more recognition, which is good. So we'll see about those localish derbies next year. Ceará and Sport Recife coming up. Fortaleza and Bahia got the Libertadores to contend with, or Fortaleza definitely, Bahia have to qualify, but they potentially have the continental competition. So it'd be interesting to see next year what the Brasileirão has for us.
Another team from the northeast, of course, Bahia's local rivals in Salvador are Vitória, George. And I wanted to touch on Vitória just briefly, but actually, let's do it now, because we'll do the goal of the round. And I think one player from Vitória was very much in the running for this, Janderson. That was a really nice hit, wasn't it? That was certainly in the running for the goal of the round. It didn't win it, but it was up there. And Vitória, of course, pulling out another very impressive result, 1-1, and they will be in continental competition as well next year, George, after finishing 11th, amazingly.
Yeah, it was 2-2, wasn't it, James, on the last night? Yeah, 2-2. But yeah, again, you've got to say, James, that Thiago Carpini, he has to be as well in our running for manager of the year from where he took them and where I think Vitória would have expected to be, to finish just below mid-table or mid-table, if you like, isn't it? Basically, is an absolute enormous achievement for him, really, and the team. And Alejandro, one of my favourites, he got another goal last night. He levelled with Yuri Alberto for the Golden Boot. I don't know what happens. You referenced it last time, James. I don't know what happens. It's been shared between the two of them. They've both got 15 goals apiece. I don't know what's going to happen with that. but to get Sudamericana qualification to play continental football next season is a real achievement, and they've done especially well to do it. And hats off to Carpini and to the boys there. They've done a marvellous job. It's going to be a real challenge next year to balance continental competition and Brasileirão. So we'll wait to see how they do. Naturally, probably they will be tipped for relegation, but there's other teams coming up that potentially are weaker as well. So they'll fancy it, particularly if they can get Alejandro on a permanent deal. RB Bragantino might say, hey, we stayed up now, you're coming back to us, and we've seen what you can do. So it's going to be hard for them to get him, but he is very much a key player.
Yeah, Carpini signed a new contract now, so he's going to be up until, signed a contract till a year from now, so he's contracted for the full season next year, which is what they seem to do. It seems to tend to be 1-year deals, so he's really earned that. I mean, really fair play to him after an awful start at Sao Paulo. But yeah, the reason I wanted to bring it up in the goal of the round, George, was because of Alejandro. I mean, obviously, Janderson, that was a really nice strike, wasn't it? But Alejandro actually was awarded the goal of the season, George. So he has actually been given not only that top scorer award, which I do believe is shared with Yuri Alberto. I don't think there's a tiebreaker, although if it were, you'd probably go to Alberto, given he scored less penalties. But I think they do share it. He was a picture of him at the end of the game, holding up two little kind of awards. It was hard to tell what they look like. The Premier League ones a bit like a Smarty Tube type thing, but a square one. And he was holding two up, and he won the goal of the round. So I don't think we are going to do a goal of the season. Sorry, a goal of the season he won. We're not going to do one, I don't think, just because it's a bit tricky to pick one. But this was a really good one, and I actually didn't remember it when I had to look back at it, but it was an overhead kick, George. I don't know if you remember it, against Cruzeiro. It was back in, I think, September. I mean, it was a hellishly good goal, and it has won the goal of the season. So just your reaction to that, and obviously Alejandro himself winning 2 awards there. It's been some campaign for him.
Yeah, I think we gave him the goal of the round in that sense, James. It was in August. It was a 2-2 draw with Cruzeiro. Yeah. He got our goal of the round. Obviously, he got the goal of the season. It was a hellishly unbelievable. It was just an unbelievable goal, wasn't it? I mean, it's a nice little interlude, actually, James, to something else, isn't it? But in what we might give out soon. But yeah, it was an amazing goal. He's really caught my eye in this season, and I think whoever ends up with him, whether he makes a move to Vitória permanent, or if he makes a move elsewhere, he ends up back at Bragantino. Whoever ends up with him next year has got a heck of a player who is now an established, striker in this division. 15 goals at that level. To say he was on loan, he's only 24. He's not an old player. He's put himself in the shop window there, but unbelievable strike, that one. It was from distance, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, it was.
It was some technique. Yeah, it was some technique, that, James. I remember it. It was, and obviously, like I said, it did win our goal of the round on that particular time in August. So yeah, a good player, and all round Vitória, very well done to them, and him sharing it with Yuri. Alberto is a seasoned pro almost, even though he's a year younger than him. So to be in that sort of company is a testament to Alejandro himself as well.
Yeah, parabéns to him. I'm sure Red Bull will be very, very, very keen to keep him, given their struggles, as we mentioned, in front of goal. So let's look forward to seeing him in the division next year. And actually, George, just as an interesting aside, we talk about the Northeastern clubs there, which apparently don't get enough recognition. Every single top scorer from 1, 2, 3, and 4 divisions of Brazilian football were from teams in the northeastern clubs. So that's an interesting something in the water, maybe in the northeast this year. But like you said, moving away from the goal of the season to the goal of the round, our last goal of the round. And to another bicycle kick, as you cleverly mentioned there, and again a consecutive winner of this award, George, Mr. Memphis Depay. What an end to the season he's had. This was a little less kind of dramatic than Alejandro's overhead kick. Perhaps it put the exclamation point on a 3-0 win for Corinthians. on an 8th win in a row, I think, for Corinthians, and it cemented them in 7th place, didn't it? But yeah, your thoughts again on another Memphis Depay stunner.
Look, I mean, Memphis Depay, like you said, got the goal around on Friday with that lovely free kick, cannoned off the bar. He got it in just the sweet spot where he could, where the goalkeeper couldn't get it. This was, like you said, it wasn't quite as spectacular as Alejandro to win the goal of the season for the league, but it was still some technique, wasn't it? It was right at the very end. Like you said, put the exclamation point on this win, a 3-0 win away at Gremio. And it puts them 8 wins in a row to end the season with. Memphis Depay himself, 5 goals in 5 games. He's on hot form as well as Yuri Alberto is. And those two, I've said it so many times over the last period of time. Those two together is some force. You can't stop it, really. It was a lovely technique. It's one that you'd expect from a caliber of player such as Memphis Depay, with the history and the quality that he has. He's not a Dutch international for no reason, is he? He's got that in his locker, and he showed it again. It was a lovely finish, James. And Corinthians, what more can you say about them? We've absolutely waxed lyrical about them over the last few weeks and months, and of course they've absolutely deserved it.
Yeah, they've been brilliant. And like you said, Alberto, Depay together have just been terrorising defensively these last few weeks. It'll be interesting to see whether they are both still here come the start of next season. I've got a feeling that at least one of them may not be. Depay, as we know, last week was talking about how he's still got much more to give Corinthians, but if that offer does come in from Europe in January, you'd imagine that he might jump at it. But it's certainly been a good interlude to his career, and it's reminded a few perhaps of the quality that he does have. And like you said, he's not just any old Dutch international. He's got 98 caps for the Netherlands, and I think he's just about the all-time top scorer. He's either done it or he's very, very close to breaking that. So, yeah, he's a real coup for Corinthians. He was a real coup. And, 7th position when it looked a few months ago like they were going to go down is a real turnaround for them. And those two players have been key to it, as has Rodrigo Garro, George, who we've spoken about plenty. And he does end the season as the top assister, the Playmaker Award they give it in England. I don't know whether it's got a special name over in Brazil, but he wins that. 3 clear of Estevao even. He got 10. Estevao got 7, I think. No, Estevao got 9, didn't he? Sorry. Only 1 clear of Estevao in the end. But 3 clear of Savarino, who, again, we didn't mention, got a key goal. Mateus Pereira and Ganso from Fluminense. So well done to Rodrigo Garro. Well done to Corinthians, who have, look like a really exciting team to watch next season, I'd say, George. And Gremio, on their point of view, just finished the season. That's it. It kind of sums up their season. As we said with Inter, the Rio Grande do Sul stuff at the start of the season obviously didn't set the tone for the year for them in a very good way, and they struggled to really get any kind of rhythm, but they have stayed up in the end. So, what do you think about Gremio? Just very briefly.
Yeah, like you said, just end the season, and they did. They managed to stay away from relegation, which looked a little bit on the cards as this in the first few months. They did right to stick with Renato Gaucho in the end. I don't know whether he will stick around next season, but they will just be happy to get the season done with. All right, they missed out on Sudamericana qualification, but I think just at this moment they'll just be relieved, like Fluminense, that they were a point further up in 13th. That the season is done. They are still a top flight club. Just get over it and get on with the next season and make sure that it doesn't happen again. They're sort of, front two, we talk about Depay and Alberto, who are probably more lethal. But the two up front there in this game was Diego Costa and Martin Braithwaite. So for that league, if Costa can keep fit, we know Luis Suarez had a massive influence on Gremio last season, didn't he? If Costa can stay fit, then maybe he can have a bit more of an impact next time. Only 1 goal in 14 appearances this time. He was hampered by injury, of course. I think they'll just be happy just to get away from the season without being relegated. Just to touch again on Corinthians briefly, James. Well, I did see, I don't know whether it was before the game or after the game, but I love this. There was a little interlude on them on social media, and they do the player entrances. The players come in, that somebody's filming them walking into the stadium, and and they're always here in England. They're always a bit like, all right, they'll all look really miserable and fist pumping the guy behind the camera. Well, Corinthians were actually doing like a conga into the changing room, and I don't know who was leading it, but it was like I don't know if it might have been the goalkeeper actually, Nogueira, but I don't know if it was him or not. It might have been. But one of them was at the front, or it might have been Carrillo actually, but one of them was at the front leading it, and they were all just dancing into the changing room. I thought it obviously just shows the confidence that they've got in themselves at the moment, that sort of 7 now ended it with 8 wins in a row. What the kind of confidence and kind of togetherness of the team it is really brought into them. And yeah, it was just good to see because they're obviously quite happy and going into work quite joyful instead of just, being a bit like miserable, which they always do seem to look over here walking into the stadiums.
Yeah, well, why not when you've won so many in a row? And that probably didn't bode well for Gremio, who, like we said, just wanted the season done. So, yeah, they just wanted the season to end, basically, Corinthians. Another few weeks and they'd have put themselves up in the kind of the top 4 picture, really. So they would have been just buzzing, really. And interesting to see if they can take that into next season, because obviously there is a big break. Who knows what will be going on by the time the season kicks off in April. So, yeah, they won't have wanted it to end, but it has ended, and it's ended for them with a 7th place finish, which is, a really, really good result for them based on everything that could have gone wrong, didn't go wrong in the end, and something really clicked. Obviously, last year they were 13th, so they even managed to better that. So well done to Corinthians. I mean, I'm a fan of them. I like them a lot. I almost picked them to support over Inter, but I always like to see them doing well anyway. We'll see if they're up there next season. Well, George, that concludes not only this week's show, but it concludes the season, the Brasileirão season. What a year we've had, covering it right from January, right from before any ball was kicked, right up until the end of Matchday 38. Our predictions, I don't think, really came true at all. We might have a look back on that next week. So there will be a show, I think, next week, won't there, where we might review. We maybe won't be able to do all the teams, but we'll try and review a lot of them. And or give out the awards. I don't know what you want to do, which way you want to do it.
Well, I mean, I don't know, James. If we've just got one left of the season, then I think we should potentially give out awards. Or I kind of like the idea of doing like we did with the mid-season, of doing like a final season review of each team and going through each team and giving a little score out of 10 maybe. But I don't know if it's worth doing that or maybe just going straight to the awards. I don't know what you want to do, or do you want to do 2 final episodes of the season? I mean, what do you think, really?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky with the Christmas coming. I think we should probably just do a review, and we can throw the player awards. We can throw the awards in there as well.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
that'll work. But yeah, like you said, we've literally covered every single game week. We've done it for nearly a year now. The pod, James. I think the first episode went up on Spotify on the 13th of January this year. So it's coming up to a year now. So it's been great. We've learned a lot, and long may it continue into next season. We'll do us research on the teams that have come up. And, and now we've got a basis to work from. This season is our kind of basis to work on and work from. There will be teams that we know now, and players that we know who might move on to different teams, and so we'll know more about it going in from a little bit blind last season. We're going from a real bit of a good standpoint. I think we've learned quite a lot, James, about the league, about the teams, about the players, and about how the system works in Brazil as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to next year already, to be honest. It will be a long break. I know we'll do one next week, but we will then be absent for a few months. So it's going to be, I don't know why I'm going to fill up my time, really, but there you go.
Well, I think we can have probably a 2 or 3 week break maybe, and we might come back with some. We'll have to do a few previews and things, so we'll have to see how that works. But we'll certainly be here for next week anyway. But in the meantime, why don't you, George, for one last time, run us through the very final Brasileirão table for 2024. Let us know what position all 20 teams finished in just for the last time this year.
Well, it'll be my pleasure, James. So top, and congratulations Two of them is Botafogo on 79 points, winners of the 2024 Brasileirão season. Second was Palmeiras on 73 points. Third, Flamengo on 70. Fourth, Fortaleza on 68. Fifth was Inter on 65. Sixth, Sao Paulo on 59 points. 56 points was seventh, Corinthians. Eighth, Bahia on 53. Ninth, Cruzeiro on 52. 10th is Vasco on 50. 11th, Vitória on 47. Galo were in 12th with 47 as well. 13th, Fluminense on 46. 14th on 45 was Grêmio. 15th, Juventude on 45. 16th was RB Bragantino surviving on the last day on 44 points. Relegated then, James, Atletico PR on 42 in 17th. 18th, Kashuma on 38. 19th, Atletico GO on 30. And bottom of the pile, Cuiabá on 30 points.
Yeah, and we say goodbye to Atletico Paranense, Criciúma, Atletico Gio, and Cuiabá. It's been a shame to see some go. Somebody has to go, and they're the teams that have taken the trap door out this time. So, George, any closing thoughts as we say goodbye to the Brazil? Well, we're not really saying goodbye. We're going to say goodbye to the Series 1 of Talking Brazil Ball next week. But any closing thoughts on this chapter of the season?
No, I mean, it's been a brilliant season. Like I said, James, we've learned a lot. You know, it's been fantastic to learn about the teams, about the players, about everything. And like I said, about the system, how the Brazilian league works. Because I think we were both a little bit blind to it, we didn't really know initially what, now we've learned how it is. It's been a great season. I've really enjoyed week to week, or as it's been, we've done a few in a week now as it's come to a close. But I've really enjoyed discussing it with you and giving out the awards, looking at the players, everything. It's been great, and long may it continue. Obviously, season 1 wraps up next week. So yeah, and then on with season 2. Let's see what happens there.
Yeah, certainly it doesn't stop. So that's music. That's you. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to everybody in the Brasileirão for making it a wonderful season. And we'll see you next week anyway. Adios, everybody.
Yeah, adios, everybody. Enjoy.
Parabéns to Botafogo.
It's been great.
We're breaking it down, bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Summer vibes, we're dancing in the heat. Go, go, go. Can't be beat, Talking Brazil, go spreading love in every way. In the sound of paradise, we're here to stay.